Hello, it's Brad Laurie of BlockchainBrad, and today we're speaking about all things Troy. And to do that, we have one of the key co-founders of Troy with us today. His name is Kira Sung, and as I said, he's a co-founder and he's representing a project that many people simply don't know about yet. Kira, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk with you about our project, Troy. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome, and thank you for being so polite. But for transparency, truth, and trust, it's very important that I explain that this is a sponsored video. This is sponsored on behalf of BlockVera, and I need to also explain why. With BlockVera, what we're doing is trying to enable all of the listeners to have access also to unbiased content. So when we do sponsorships like this, what we do is we take some of those funds and we actually support unbiased freelance content from content creators, all the way from podcasters through to writers. So we're really trying to give back, but it is so important that you as a listener are respected and you know that this is indeed a sponsored piece. Now, once again, my job is to be as objective as possible despite the sponsorship, and that's what I'll certainly be doing tonight. So let's get stuck into what you stand for at Troy. Now with Troy, it explains that you are a global prime broker specialised in crypto asset trading. A mouthful, and there's a lot more to come when we understand and unpack the full network. But can you tell us a bit more about what it means to be a prime broker?
Okay, a lot of people maybe not that familiar with the concept of prime brokerage. I could give you some big names that you are familiar with, like Goldman Sachs, Interactive Brokers, Fidelity, UBS. Those big financial firms are prime brokers. So you may be wondering what they are offering to their clients or what they are doing in the financial market. They will offer you a platform or a single access to give you global liquidity of equity, bond, futures, foreign exchange, and all the financial derivatives and financial instruments all integrated on one account. So you could trade globally, share global liquidity, and they could give you a serious prime broker services, including the margin lending, securities borrowing, financial reporting, risk control, and a lot of services. They integrate these services on the platform and they call it prime broker.
Okay, so in that sense, it sounds like there's a bit of an aggregation aspect or a unifier when it comes to liquidity. Is that the primary asset that you're trying to establish with this prime broker system or this prime brokerage in making it a more one-stop shop process, making it easy and seamless?
Yes, because prime brokers business is very mature in the traditional financial market, but there is a total blank in the cryptocurrency market. So we want to move this concept into cryptocurrency market and make it thrive. That's
right. It's interesting because DeFi is a buzzword, and there's other parties I know of. I spoke to one recently trying to do that aggregation when it comes to improving liquidity scenarios. But I also want to talk about your slogan. Now, it says you want to redefine trade specifically by moving beyond exchange itself. So can you talk us through what you actually mean there?
Yeah, as you just mentioned, our vision, because we want to redefine trading and go beyond exchange by reshape this business about how people trade cryptocurrencies in this industry. Because my background, I came from the traditional financial market. I was in charge of bond trading in my prior work experience. So I have a very mature infrastructure to facilitate the investment process. But as I move my career into cryptocurrency world, I find this industry quite primitive, and the absence of prime brokerage has locked the potential for this industry for further development. So that's why I started a project to unlock the potential, because we want to build a prime broker in this industry. And this industry, because you see in traditional financial market, if I ask you a question, where do you trade your stocks? You maybe tell me a name like Goldman Sachs or some brokers firms or dealers firm who provide such kind of service to you. You won't tell me that you trade stocks on NYSE or CBOE. But in cryptocurrency, if I ask, where do you trade cryptocurrency? You tell me you trade on Binance, you trade on Huobi. Those are the names of exchanges. So you may find that there is quite awkward, because in the financial market, you do not have direct engagement with exchanges.
Right, but that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, but in this market, you have to have direct engagement with exchanges. This is the exposure of the absence of prime brokers. So we want to fill in the blank. So that's Troy is going to do in this area.
Okay, now it's very interesting that you want to be that conduit for a multitude of exchanges, but it doesn't just stop there. Now, this is where it gets confusing perhaps for some, trying to distinguish between the protocol, distinguish between Troy trade, and then go one step further. So I want to read you a quote that comes from your own literature. It says that one of the goals for Troy is to build a world-class financial platform based on fundamental infrastructural blockchain. Now, when I read into the premise of Troy Trade and try and understand that you want to be that one-stop facility to enable cross-chain trade, you want to be a system in which you can interact between a multitude of different exchanges, that's fine. But when we talk about financial platform, that's another conversation. That opens up so much more. So can you tell us, what is it that you are fundamentally? Are you the protocol? Are you the platform? Are you about the trade?
Right, great question. Because Troy project is the combination of Troy Trade and Troy Network. Troy Trade is a centralized trading platform and the prime broker service provider. The Troy Network is a decentralized trading and settlement blockchain protocol. So you could consider this. Troy Trade will be the first application that is run on the Troy blockchain, Troy Network protocol, and Troy Trade will be some kind of interface for users to get interaction with our blockchain protocol, and more like an explorer. But we are doing this just like how Binance do their exchange business. They start from a centralized exchange, the Binance exchange, right? And then they launch their own Binance blockchain. Similar, we will start from the centralized trading platform, the Troy Trade, and then we will launch our Troy Network, the roadmap.
Okay, so let's pull it back. So if we start with the protocol, if we start with Troy Trade, how far along are you in that roadmap, for example? So we can understand, it's clear from what you're saying, it's longitudinal. You are building this vision out. You want to be this replete, robust financial platform. But right now, as we speak, where are you positioned in terms of the development? Are you fundamentally, first and foremost, that Troy Trade now, or have you got parts of the mechanics already building to become more of this robust system?
Okay, as for the timeline, we will launch the Troy Trade at late October this year. And as for the Troy Network, we will launch at late October 2020. So it's the roadmap next year. But as for the Troy Trade, although we will launch the first version and make it publicly this October, but we have offered this platform and service to some of our closest friends and closest clients for almost a year. So our product, Troy Trade, is quite mature and is fully capable and functional for prime brokerage services. But right. Troy Network is still at the MVP stage, and it will be launched next year.
Okay, so that's still quite fast. When I've looked at the scope of the network itself, of that financial platform or that system that you call it, that is ambitious, no question, but you've already clearly thought about all the different components, and I imagine you're working towards building this out, and we're going to find out how. But once again, you've made it clear that there's a distinction between Troy Trade and once again, that fundamental protocol for settlement, as you mentioned, and trade, and also then once again, moving beyond that to the full network. I did want to ask though, in terms of your token, and we'll explore this in more detail, but it's important we ask this now, is that the fundamental asset that unifies the both parts? You know, if we use the analogy of building an engine, you know, you want to build it to the point where it has full capacity. Now, does that unit of account or that unit of exchange, does that represent both aspects? Firstly, the Troy Trade, and then build upon that to have relevance in the network?
Yes, exactly. So just like how BNB, the Binance token, works, it is firstly the ERC20 standard, and then they issue their tokens by their own Binance blockchain. So Troy token, as our native token, we will first deploy it on the ERC20 basis and to circulate it in our ecosystem. And then as soon as the Troy network is alive, we will transfer our ERC20 tokens to the Troy network tokens on our blockchain project.
I see. So when do you think that transition into the native token will happen based on your roadmap?
About 1 year later.
I see. Okay, so that will all be pending, you know, everything goes to plan, and then you can really expand the ecosystem into those different verticals, which we'll talk about. Now, one of the things that was also mentioned as well, Kira, is that it says that you're non-custodial, focused on decentralized trade as you build the settlement protocol. Can you talk us through those 2 points of non-custodial and also decentralized, because later as you build your system, decentralized and centralized are integrated. So that's why I want to make this distinction early.
Okay, because you see, most people may think Troy Network Protocol is a public chain, but I want to make it clear we are not a public chain project. We are just a settlement protocol, and we will build our protocol on the base of layer 1 plus layer 2 architecture. As for the layer 1 public chain, we will choose Polkadot or Cosmos as our layer 1 and choose Sealer Network as our layer 2 solutions. So we are not a public chain, so we will pack up all the services that layer 1 blockchain and the layer 2 blockchain can provide together, and to develop our own settlement protocol on the basis of layer 1 and layer 2.
Okay, now that's very interesting. So essentially you are an agnostic protocol.
Yeah.
And you can operate and interoperate later as you build this technology on various chains, on various blockchains.
Exactly.
So I wanted to ask you, why Polkadot? Why Cosmos? Now, give us some clear basis for some of the proof, some of the research, some of the evidence that you're making the right choices to integrate and work with certain blockchains.
Yeah, because we want to choose the very fundamental public chain from the most leading cross blockchain protocols. So Polkadot and Cosmos is the top 2 cross blockchain protocol we could find on the market. And from the recommendation of our CTO, we think this is the most appropriate way that we start from for our settlement protocol.
Okay, it seems also, given that you're DeFi centric, or focused on that vertical or that area, with WASM as well, the WebAssembly, it seems like there's a good reciprocal and mutually beneficial scenario emerging there. With regard to the 4 layers, I also want to talk about that, because you have a stack system, as you build towards this network. And in that you have the application layer. So in your graph or graphic that you have, Troy sits at the top of that, as I would imagine Troy Trade, and you can clarify this as we go. And then you also have your settlement network, and then you have your off-chain state channels like Seller, and then at the very bottom you have those public chains as you mentioned. So can you talk us through, since we're starting with Troy Trade and this settlement protocol, where does it sit in this full stack as you're building this plan out?
So because Troy Trade will be the first application on the future Troy network blockchain, it will be, you could consider it is very normal centralized trading platform or software. So you could trade tokens, you could treat it like some kind of integrated exchanges. So you could do whatever trading you want on our platform. So as soon as our Troy network protocol going alive, we will transfer part of our functions to the Troy network protocol, because we think the solution that blockchain technology can provide is quite long tail. The blockchain cannot solve all of the problems you meet in your trading process. So we will move some functions that are suitable for blockchains to solve, to move those functions on our protocol.
Okay, that makes sense. But just to interrupt there, so in the future, you'll utilize your own chain and you'll transition to that that native token will operate on your own independent system. But right now, if we use the analogy of that full 4-layered stack that is mentioned in your literature, right now, if we use the analogy of Cosmos, if we use the blockchains that exist, my understanding is that you're at the top of that layered structure. Right now, if we look at what you are fundamentally today, which is the settlement protocol, that sits on top, and at the bottom, because you don't have your own blockchain yet, you can work in that full stack with things like Cosmos, Polkadot, and others that you've also mentioned. So once again, talk us through the layers when it comes to public chain, off-chain, settlement network, and then the application layer, that's Troy. Talk us through the plan and how this works today, since you haven't yet built out your own blockchain, but you're going to build this system with current blockchains of choice.
Yes, that's the reason why I mentioned first. We put the schedule and the timeline for Troy Trade very late till next year, because we want to majorly focus on the Troy Trade, which is the centralized product currently. Because if we want to build such kind of 4-layer technological architecture, it would be really time consuming. And to be honest, right now, the technology is not that kind of mature for support such kind of TPS or trading efficiencies for our very integrated trading processes, because you see we have achieved a great optional data now. We have achieved about average $100 million per day trading volume. So the blockchain technology is not mature to undertake such kind of power and functions. So basically, the 4-layer technology architecture is what we are planning in our head for the architecture of Troy network, but we will to see if it is effective or if it is workable during when we develop Troy Trade, because it is not set yet.
Okay, so that full 4-layer plan is to come in the future, so that's really clear. Now, Troy Trade, can we talk about some aspects of that, going back to what you are now, in terms of some tough points to understand? Things like cross-chain interoperability, supernodes, and again, that non-custodial system. They are all relevant to what you are now. Can we talk about those and what they mean for part of the value that you bring?
Okay, so shall we start with the supernode?
Mm-hmm.
So you see, we just make this supernode as a reflection from the traditional financial market. You see, in the financial markets, there are exchanges, there are prime brokers, but there is a sub-level of network of service providers called introducing brokers. Those introducing brokers may other small broker firms or media or terminals. They will invoke more users to trade on the service platform of prime broker. So what we are calling supernode, so we want to develop a series of introducing brokers in the cryptocurrency market. For example, community leaders, medias, terminals, they could see themselves as a node and they can join our Troy Trade system and they can introduce more users to register or to trade on Troy platform. It's just a reflection of the traditional broker network system.
Okay, all right. So what's the benefit? What's the primary reason why you would introduce the supernode system into this?
Okay, this has a very strong relationship with our token economics, because you see from our token metrics, about 60% of our total supply is allocated to mining rewards. So if you are a supernode, you join our ecosystem. If you provide a proof of workload, let's say if you introduce more users to trade on token, or you create a lot of trading volume, you will get mining rewards. This is an incentive mechanism to maintain this entire ecosystem, and to get our introducing brokers intense incentive to get more users to trade in this ecosystem.
Okay, so in that, before we move on to those other points, I want to understand the technology itself. Now, if you've built in the protocol, firstly, to be highly operational now, and it's successful as you've built out the tests, because now you're at beta phase, I understand. So what's the proof of the tech? How can we know that the tech, firstly, is sound, that it's working, and what is the basis of the tech that drives, the success of these supernodes, for example?
Okay, this supernode tech is not a blockchain-based technology. It is rather a very simple product, because we do this in traditional financial market every day, and it is quite mature. It's just a very centralized ledger to record everything and every behavior our clients has behaved on our software or trading platform, and then we record it, and to see how well your performance is, or how many new users are referred by you, and we could allocate those mining rewards to you. Okay,
all right. And I want to talk to you more about the centralized system that is currently the Troy trading system now. But when we talk about cross-chain interoperability, is that a feature that you're building in the future, or is that something that will be available soon?
It's a feature in the future, now on the Troy Trade.
Okay, got it. Okay, so can you tell us a bit more about that plan? How are you going to achieve that? What's the strategy to achieve that cross-chain element?
Yes, because you see in the future, because some of our institutional clients may have a very desperate need for the cross-blockchain transactions, and they do not, and they lack a very transparent third party to have a proof of their transaction. That's the reason why we developed this settlement protocol in the first place. So because you see, we do not think currently everybody trades tokens on the exchange is the final format for the future trading format. because we see in the future, as the blockchain technology gets more advanced and as the TPS keep growing, a lot of trading process itself will be transacted directly on the blockchain. So that's what we're trying to achieve, and why we choose Polkadot and the Cosmos in the first place, because we do not think currently everybody believes if we want to trade tokens, we could trade it on exchanges. But we believe in the future the exchanges will also go decentralized, and all financial service will go decentralized. This is a plan for the future. Yeah.
I see, and I want to talk to you more about that in a moment. But with regard to non-custodial, can you just reaffirm why that's of value to have that non-custodial system built in for your current model?
Yeah, because as a centralized trade, we do not want to touch the assets of our clients due to the security reasons. So we will, that's the essence of our account management system. So basically, if you want to trade tokens, you have to create one account on each exchange, right? But if you trade on Troy will create one corporate grade account on each exchange, and we'll create a serious dummy account for our clients. So your assets will be deposited and custodial directly by the top exchanges, because those top exchanges have the highest level of security and custody services. So Troy will not provide custodial service to you, and it guarantees the safety to your assets. That's the point to our non-custodial.
I see. Now, in terms of KYC and AML, will you facilitate a more seamless approach through your protocol so that those high net worth clients, those customers that you're planning to have, won't have to go through the rigors of all of the different exchanges?
Yeah, very good question. We have negotiated to a united form of KYC material template. So it reached to a result that if you pass the KYC standards of Troy, you automatically pass the standards for the exchange. The exchange would not require you to do a second round of KYC.
Wow, that's quite interesting. So you literally negotiated that as Troy with those parties. Now, with regard to the centralization aspect, obviously your plan is to merge or move into support for both centralized and decentralized exchanges. You want to also support your a whole holistic approach. But now at the beginning, you're first and foremost centralized by core design. Does that concern you at all, Kira, given that we hear the common narrative out there that everything's pro-decentralized? There's an argument in the space also that word gets thrown around too much. What's your viewpoint at this, beginning point for Troy?
Okay, we have considered this issue for quite a long time, but we get back to the essence of blockchain technology, which is the concept I just mentioned before. We do not think everybody's talking about the blockchain technology is a revolutionary technology, but honestly, I don't believe blockchain is suitable for every problems that we meet. And the blockchain technology is suited for solving those long tail problems. For let's take an example, about 95% of daily, let's say, trading process or the needs for trading can be solved by centralized solutions. It is more efficient and is also very transparent and secured. It doesn't need to be solved on the block based on blockchain technology, but we only need to do those use cases that are born for the blockchain technology and put those functions on blockchain protocol. So we think we have to see this very critically, because blockchain cannot solve everything.
Got it. Now, for those of you who'd like to know more, what I'm going to do is put in the description below a full 14-minute video to explain the entirety of what Troy Trade is essentially trying to do. That's been also uploaded onto the YouTube of the Troy, from the Troy team. You can certainly go there as well. But make sure, if you do want to know specifically more about a more a fast track analysis of what their core tenets are, what they really stand for, check that out. It will be in the description below. And in the future, hopefully, Kira, you and I could catch up and speak more to that particular video so we can explore that.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit more about the roles of the different parts that you plan in the future, just so that people can understand the magnitude of what you want to get to. And the reason why I want to do that is because your token relates to this plan. And so it needs to be discussed. Now, there are I want to break it down to 4 parts: the DeFi, the enterprise, the blockchains, and then the exchanges. Can you talk us through that quadrangle in your plan as you move forward to that 2020 goal of having this all built out?
Okay, let's start with the enterprises, the traditional enterprises, because those are some of our major clients that we are targeting our services to.
Right, and I wrote them down, so that's why I really want to talk about them, because I was really surprised by these names.
Great. So we are approached by a lot of traditional financial firms that they want to put part of their portfolio, part of their capital in the cryptocurrency market, but they lack of a one-stop solution to meet all of their trading needs. For example, there is a hedge fund. They want to invest in cryptocurrencies, so they do not know how to do account management. They do not know how to control their risk because they haven't met an infrastructure in this area. So we provide them with our trading platform, and by collaborating with some broker firms with licenses, we could directly give our services to those traditional investors who trade cryptocurrency with fiat. So they used to trade trade equities or trade bonds, but currently they could trade cryptocurrency on Troy. That solved a lot of their problem because with custodial service, financial reporting, risk control, they all need that.
Okay, now I want to talk to you about some of the names that I read. Things like Visa, JP Morgan, Facebook, Kakao, Fidelity, and Line. So they're just some of them. Now, the reason normally I don't list the whole lot of names, but some of them really stood out. I wanted to find out more about how established your planning is, the conversations at the top levels. Are these just plans and ideas, or where's the evidence to suggest that there's more than just plausibility built into these kinds of partners working with you as enterprise partners as you build the network out?
Yes, those are the ideal partners we want to work maybe in the future, but currently we are collaborating with smaller firms than the big main names you just mentioned, just like because there are so many of hedge funds. They have a team of maybe 30 to 50 people. They just want to do their decision-making process, and they want to leave everything else behind to a third party to require services from them. So by collaborating with Troy, let's say you are a small hedge fund, you are the fund manager, and you have 3 to 5 analysts. You only have intellectual property, but you do not have an infrastructure or other mechanism to help you maintain your corporate. So by collaborating with Troy, you could leave yourself with decision making and leave everything else to us.
Got it. Okay. So just to clarify, in the future, you're hoping through your own ambition to try and partner with some of those big names, but you haven't yet done that. And obviously that makes sense given that you haven't actually built out the whole network itself anyway, because you're focused on that first component, that centralized asset that is the settlement protocol. Now, does that mean that the names you put forward in the literature that people can go and access publicly for the other parts, for the DeFi, for the blockchains, and for the exchanges, are they just all more the names that you'd like to partner with, or are there any that have already been established as you're building this network out?
Yeah, as for the exchanges side, the name you see, they are the top leading. As for the leading crypto exchanges, we have already fulfilled all of the function. We have got access to all those top 30 crypto exchanges around the world. So
so the exchanges are done.
Yeah.
Okay. What about the other parts with the DeFi and with the blockchains?
As for the DeFi and the blockchain, it is more related to Troy network. So we haven't started that kind of
conversation.
We haven't moved that far.
Right. Okay. So what I will say is it's good to see some of the planning you do have, that it's out there. So people can, for the reason that people can see that you're more than just the protocol in your holistic design and plan. That's really important. But right now you're focused again, I keep reiterating this, on that settlement protocol for prime brokerage. And again, that's why you focus so much on the exchanges right now.
Exactly.
Okay, that's good to know. Run through some of the names for us so we understand. When you have the top 30 exchanges, what does that actually mean? And how did you determine what makes a top exchange when we have serious issues of wash trading, questionable conduct? We see, all kinds of things going on within the scope. Questionable volume, for example, fake volume. How did you determine what makes it the top 30 and what made the cut?
Yeah, that's one of our advantage because initially our seed investors and seed clients, they are the most leading market makers or high frequency trading firms on the market. So are really well aware of which exchange have the organic and genuine trading volume and which exchanges are full of fake or watch trading. So they'll help us select the first collection of our leading exchanges. And then by doing our business, because we have done this for almost a year, we have tested the organic trading volume and liquidity on different exchanges and finalized the whitelist of what exchanges we want to get access to.
Okay, all right. Well, the big question then is, the real proof is in compliance and regulation, because that obviously also drives, particularly in places like the US, that drives more of that support for the good actors in the exchange domain. Now, will you be completely compliant in those regions? Because that will really support more of the trust for this ecosystem to build.
Yes, as for the compliance reason, we have two perspectives for that, because there are some kind of exchanges like exchanges in US or exchanges in Korea. They require you to pass a very serious KYC standards, and you have to have a domestic bank account so that you could trade tokens listed on those exchanges with your fiat, like US dollar or Korean dollar, right? But on Troy Network, those kind of compliance issue is not a problem. Even if I am a Chinese and I want to trade a token on the Korean exchange, I don't have to create an account directly on, let's say, Upbit. Because on Troy platform, we have a prime brokerage services within. You could trade with Troy, and Troy has met all the requirements of Upbit. Troy can do the trade on the opposite
right.
way.
Okay. So because you're that conduit for the exchanges, what I'm going to get at though is, will you have the approvals? Will you have the support of US exchanges, for example, that are well known for trying to be good actors in this space? Obviously in Europe there are others worldwide. So are you really trying to tap into the global marketplace? Not just those that are familiar perhaps in Asia, where there's predominance of, as you mentioned, Binance, Huobi. I know they're global exchanges, but certainly there are parties that are really supporting them that have come from those regions. So will you be able to utilize your protocol and once again have access indirectly to those markets?
Yes, we have that plan, because on our roadmap, in the first quarter of 2020, we will start to acquire or collaborate with those financial firms with a broker-dealer license. And by collaborating with those licenses, or we direct acquire some licenses, we could meet all of the compliance and regulatory requirements of different regions and different governments. So we will make this forward and to get access to the global marketplace.
Right, so licensing is part of your roadmap too. Is that a difficult thing to get? And obviously it's a bit of a bet really at this point in time, as people start to really trust the planning that you have, because the reality is this is just the start for you with your protocol. You want to build this out, and people are hopefully going to go with you along in this roadmap. But once again, part of this is the licenses that are not yet so organized. They're happening later. How much homework have you done as a team to make sure it's even possible that you can get those licenses?
Yeah, it is not that hard, because you see it highly depends on the law and the regulations of different regions. For example, in Hong Kong, there are 9 kinds of licenses. But if we want to perform broker-dealer, we only need 2 kinds of licenses. And those 2 kinds of licenses is quite easy to acquire if we fill in all the documents and meet all the basic standards of Hong Kong SEC. We could get that kind of license. So for such kind of licenses, we choose to acquire one directly under the name of Troy. But in some region, let's say US, it is highly compliant and the regulation is really harsh and really intensive. So in such market, we would choose to collaborate with traditional financial firms who has already got compliance broker-dealer license. So we can collaborate together, and their traditional fiat investor could trade on Troy through their license. We don't have to buy ourselves yet.
I see, and that's the beauty of also, establishing partnerships around the world with other entities. Now, with regard to proof of platform partners, that's going to come later. But I want to move it back now to the conversation of investors for your startup in the, in its beginnings. I had a look through. You have quite a few Asian-based supporters or investors, really to try and help you kickstart this initiative. Talk us through the investors. What was the process? Was it a case of who you know? Because a lot of them seem to be familiar with each other. And just talk about the investor process so we understand how you started to get capital.
Okay, the Troy project has finalized around the private sale. We have raised roughly about $10 million US. Some familiar names like Block VC, Neo Global Capital Ventures, Signum from Singapore, BC Invest, Consensus Lab, and AlphaCoin GBIC investment firms. Those are the most famous blockchain investment firms in Asia or even in the world. They have private invested in Troy and give us fund. Besides money, they also pool all of their resources and their portfolio company to provide us with a wider client base. A lot of their portfolio company run their assets and strategies on our platform, so they helped us kickstart in the first place. Okay, so that's a big deal given that we're in this market we're in now in 2019. In 2017, it wouldn't be such a shock when you say 10 mil, but you've already managed to achieve that with your private investors. Clearly, there's serious power play here in that many of these parties, as you mentioned, quite sincerely are serious actors in this space, and they have been so for some time. But in establishing this, I guess you could say, investor consortium, the ones that are believing in you from the outset, what's the reason for them? What's in it for them with regard to the way in which your lockups work, for example, the way in which they can start to access the benefits as an investor? Because obviously, despite their success in the past, they are also focused on making money. So talk us through that. Okay, firstly, because our investors are all very large blockchain investment firms, they themselves have a strong need for a one-stop solution of their portfolio management. That's the reason why they are looking for us as a solution to them. But once they use our platform, they think this is the exact solution I want. So they invest in us. And so that's the reason why they can feel comfortable to put a lot of their assets on our platform. And the second thing is that because they are professional investors, they see the potential of this race and they see the essential role of prime brokerage that is going to play in the next generation of trading process. And our project meets their investment thesis. So they decide to invest in us, and they see if we could stand in this race as a prime broker, we can seize the major opportunity in the next bull market. Okay, so are you going to lock your investors up so that those who are starting to potentially engage with your token in the future in open markets can trust that there's some sort of real, true, authentic valorization from those initial investors? Yes, all of our private sale round investors will be locked for a year. They will be unlocked on a quarterly basis, so the terms is quite harsh for them, but they are long-term visionaries. They would love to make this deal because they are quite positive in this project. Okay, and given the climate, tough question, but it needs to be asked. Do you think it's long enough? Do you think that, as you mentioned, the vesting period runs through over a year for that unlock process? Do you think that's long enough, or do you think it could have been longer? I think this is quite long enough for them because, currently the market is not very well, and have make a lot of resolve to make such a huge investment amount in Troy. So they show their commitment. And besides, because we believe in our token economics, because as a prime broker, we are a firm of real profit, cash flow. We have trading fees, we have interest spread, and we have service fees from the value-added services. So we are a firm of real cash flow. So we believe even if we unlock their tokens, our token or our performance will still be strongly backed by our cash flow. We think it won't cause any trouble for our investors on the secondary market. Got it. So you have a plan for revenue because obviously there's use case built into your first protocol. Now, with regard to the future plan for access more publicly, you mentioned you've done your initial round, you've raised 10 mil, but what about, eventually becoming a utility
token in and of itself and being accessible on exchanges. What's the roadmap there for the public?
Okay, firstly, there is a token. The Choi token is the blood running through our trading system. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that let's go over through our token metrics. I just mentioned before, 60% of those tokens are allocated to mining rewards. So a lot of retail investors or individuals could get access to the token by joining our ecosystem and mine the rewards out. So they could get tokens. And only about 20% of our tokens are for sale. So that's our token matrix. So we already have a listing plan, but as you know, the market is quite volatile and it is not very well currently. So we are looking very carefully at our timeline. So we are looking at get listed in this year, but I cannot guarantee the specific time. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So this year, I need to work on every word you say. So this year, it's likely, but not guaranteed, that the public sale, essentially the public listing rather, is likely to happen. When you do that, will there be an IEO? Will there be some sort of public event or some sort of TGE? Have you got anything planned for, you know, that moment when you decide to make the move and allow the public to access it?
Yes, actually, IEO is one of our major plans because we want to be considering all of our options. And those top exchanges, they really welcome us to get listed on their exchanges. So they also gave us a lot of very insightful advices. So it really depends on the market temperature. So if the exchanges believe the market was quite well, we may go through the IEO process. But if they think the market is not as they're expected or they meet some other climate issue, we would go direct listing. It is opposite.
Well, that's good to know, because with the climate we're in, we want to hear the flexibility and response from the team themselves, because right now I did want to ask you this. Are you aware of the concerns the community have with the past performance of IEOs? Because quite sincerely, there's a lot of empirical evidence, not just spiel anymore, that it hasn't worked. Many instances, and a lot of people have been wrecked, whether that be in pre-sale, whether that be, trusting the IEO itself. A lot of people have really suffered.
Yeah, I share their concerns, so that's the reason why we are open to all kinds of listing plans.
Right, I appreciate that. Now, the big question is, why do we need all of this? Why do we need to establish some sort of unifying settlement protocol when we have fully functioning exchanges now? Many would argue that they're continuing to grow in attention, in agenda, in their own silos. Why do we need this?
Yes, that's a very good question. I got these questions a lot because people are quite familiar with currently they trade tokens on exchanges. But have you wondering about why this scenario was not the same in the traditional financial market? Mm-hmm. Because our market now is not that compliant and we do not obey a lot of regulatory requirements. That causes a lot of conflicts of interest. The exchanges, the cryptocurrency exchanges we're talking about today, they are playing the both roles of exchange and brokers. So people may confuse those two concepts together. But if you see the traditional financial market, the exchanges are definitely only exchanges, and the brokers do the broker's job.
Right, okay, so you're the first time that we can differentiate between brokerage and exchange.
Exactly, because people in the cryptocurrency market always confuse these two ideas together because it totally make people confused.
Got it. Okay, so you want to work with a lot of exchanges, but you want to be that primary brokerage support system that integrates them all, or at least 30 at the beginning. Now, with regard to the assets themselves, this is a tough question. I want to clarify this. In the information I read, BTC, Ethereum, and EOS, they were primary sort of digital assets you want to focus on. But talk us through what your plan is to support, which digital assets do you want to support as you build out your technology and your service?
We will be supporting a lot of financial instruments, not only the token spot trading, also including contract trading or derivatives trading. So as for the detail about the spot trading, you may be wondering about what kind of tokens are we supporting. Currently, we are support more than 500 cryptocurrency trading pairs. So we are both support major coins and altcoins. It depends on what our clients want, because those high frequency traders and market makers, they prefer to trade major coins, and those hedge funds, they prefer to buy and hold major coins. But some of our clients are other market makers, or they are small professional traders, so they are highly speculative. They prefer to trade altcoins, so we provide all those services altogether.
Right, okay, so right through the whole continuum, you support them. What's the requisite to be a client? To work with your protocol and to work with your service? Is there any specific requisites that I need to engage with you to be a client?
Actually, there is not a restriction, but we only offer our service to institutional clients. Our business model is B2B or B2B2C, but we are open to retail investors. We just don't do business development directly with retail investors.
Okay, so can you talk us through what that actually means? If you don't do it directly and you do it indirectly, how do retail investors work with you?
Yeah, that's the major issue, how broker network works. Because in the traditional financial market, I am a prime broker. Let's say Goldman Sachs is a prime broker. But in the sub-level broker network, I could develop a lot of partners as my introducing brokers, like a Sun broker system. Let's say Tiger Brokers. Do you know the financial firm? It is based in Hong Kong. If anybody want to trade American equity in China, they do not have American accounts, right? They have to trade on Tiger Brokers. But in the superficial way, you trade on Tiger Brokers. But in the fact, all of your trading and settlement are happened in the interactive brokers.
Right, I see. So it's the layers above where they can interact, but you're the underlying protocol. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Now, one of the things that I did want to find out more about was professional traders, grade capital, institutional. You kind of mentioned it already, but are they the fundamental sort of client base for this to really flourish?
Yes. Actually, our client base are majorly 4 categories. The first is professional traders and analysts, and other quantitative asset management team, some hedge funds, and high net wealth personals and family offices. Those are the 4 categories we are covering.
Okay, all right, well that makes a lot of sense, just so people understand exactly what your target market is. Now I want to recap on the raise itself so we're really clear. You mentioned 10 mil, but I just want to be precise. What's the hard cap of the raise that you're doing? And can you just let us know once again the token numbers, the tokenomics? What specifically are you raising in those categories so we're just crystal clear so that we can move from that?
Great. From our token metrics, about 20% of our total supply is allocated to token sale. Currently, we are already finalized a private sale round of fundraising. It raised about 12% of our total supply. So there is still 8% for token sale. Why are we leaving this 8%? Because we may go through an IEO process, and we leave those kind of quota for IEO. But if we do not do IEO, we will make, like, say, a public sale round of fundraising according to this 8%, because we are currently actively approached by a lot of exchanges and the wallet partners. They see the potential by collaborating with us, so they want to invest in a share in Troy. So we are waiting for the feedback from the exchanges and to decide whether allocate this 8% to IEO or to public sale.
Sure. Now, can you give us some estimate roughly in numbers in the amount, given that you raised, what it was for the seed? That was approximately 10 million for those initial investors. So when we acknowledge that, in terms of percentage, you made it clear. What does that translate? What does it translate to in money?
Okay, so you mean our valuation, right?
Right. So in terms of your full valuation, you can let us know that, and also what the estimates are based on percentage for when you eventually do some sort of public TGE.
Oh, it's just that 20% I mentioned above.
Yeah, but what does that translate to in money?
It's totally $8.4 million US in for the private sale round. And as for the public sale round or the IO round, the final valuation and fundraising amount has not been decided yet.
I see. Okay. But obviously it's smaller than that first amount you mentioned for that seed round.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, with regard to the token itself, I want to explore this more because it's so important, because you're building out a very long-term plan and your token is the driver of it all.
Yes.
Give us a bit of a statement to affirm what your real purpose is as a token. Just to help out the audience, you've got words like gas fee, settlement, reward, staking, and medium of value, which was something I'd not read before. But how can we trust that those things are firstly accurate, and secondly that they'll be maintained as you build out towards the network goal?
People may be confused about our token economics, but for easily understood purpose, I could make a comparison. You could see Choi token just like a platform token for exchanges like BNB or HT, Huobi token. They are the platform token for crypto exchanges, right? You could see Choi token is a platform token for Choi trade. Because as soon as our product going live, we will collect Choi token as a format of trading fee, which means people could pay trading fee with Choi. If you pay us with Choi token, you could get access and get benefit from a very cheap and competitive trading fee compared to trade tokens directly on exchanges. So we also have a quarterly periodic burning event for that, because you see our cash flow is Choi token. We will burn Choi token to create a deflation on the market on a quarterly basis.
Just like what we see with BNB happening.
Exactly. That's the first major use case. And the second major use case is the Supernode campaign you mentioned above. We want to get a lot of introducing brokers to get involved in our ecosystem, and our token will be used as incentive and to reward to new users or the new referrals.
Hence we have staking. So you've got staking, you've got burning, you've got gas fees, and you've got settlement. So I want to ask this, if we can use Binance and BNB for a bit of a synergy, to better understand. Now, right now, we see a lot of conversations about the potential expansion of the network and the system of Binance. There's talk about banking, for example, means in which people. So the point I'm making there is that we don't even know yet the scope of what Binance are planning to do, and thus BNB could definitely morph into a token that represents a much greater plan. So do you think that that's reasonable to suggest there's some similarities in that as you emerge, you'll be first and foremost this settlement protocol with the token driving that, but again, likening to parts of the unknown with Binance, you at least, you have a direction. We know where you're going. We know you're building this network. But is it fair to say that the scope of the two is, understandably similar?
I understand your question. It's how we see the value of Choi token differentiate to the exchange tokens, because we see in the future, we will shape how people trade, their habit about how people trade tokens every day. In the traditional financial market, people do not know how their trades are executed on different exchanges. They are insensitive to exchanges, but they are sensitive to their prime brokers. So people do not know the names of their exchanges, but they have to know the name of their prime brokers. We think as a prime broker, we have already been the center of this trading process. So we think our value has a greater potential than exchange tokens in the future.
Wow, that's a big statement. So you possibly, from what I'm hearing, you and your team feel that you could be more central to the whole ecosystem that is crypto, and thus be even more valuable than something like BNB.
It depends on how mature this market is, because as market got expand, the industrial chain will change, and the exchange will do exchange jobs and leave the broker jobs to us. And as a prime broker, we will be at the center in the industrial chain, and the exchange will not be in the center.
I see. Now, given there's such volatility, there's such flux in the space, you mentioned you partnered with 30 of the top exchanges. Now, if things change and you start to see some exchanges really fall and falter, do you have that sort of a process system in place so that you can accommodate for change, that you have that flexibility built in so that you can cater for the integration of new and emergent exchanges?
Yes, we have, because I mentioned we have a white list of exchanges, right? And we are currently monitor the organic trading flow of every exchange because we have that kind of access and the data flow. So we will evaluate our the organic trading volume for different exchanges on a regular basis, and we will wipe out those who fail or who are not eligible again from our whitelist.
Okay, that's good to know. Now, if we can talk through these reasonably quickly, but with some sort of succinct response, some of your key features for this first development you're making and these inroads into essentially the brokerage domain are things like master level trading platforms, sophisticated data analytics, diversified brokerage services, and full stack quantitative solutions. Mouthful in all of those, but I'm sure you've rehearsed this for all the interviews you're going to do, but they are core to your business now. So talk us through why these are so important.
Yes, because all of the key features and modules you mentioned about is the essence of prime broker business. Firstly, if I want to perform prime broker business, I have to have an infrastructure, right? Which is a trading platform. That is the basic functions we offer our clients with Troy trading platform. And on the basis of trading platform, prime brokerage is a service required by our clients. So we have to provide such kind of services and integrated these services on our platform. And all the services you mentioned about, I mean, the brokerage, it is beneath the trading platform. You could not see with your eyes, but it is actually there. Just like I could take an example, for example, is margin lending. For example, if you want to buy Bitcoin, but you only have $1, I could lend you $3 to make your total money into $4. So you could get extra absolute return, right? That is one of a lot of prime broker services. And as for the data analytics, a lot of retail users trade tokens by their sentiment. They do not have a very intelligent decision-making process, but a lot of professional traders, they have a very intelligent trading process. They make decisions based on a lot of sophisticated data. So we provide them with a lot of data and trading signals to help them make the decisions. And as for the quantitative strategy, you see a lot of our clients are quants or asset management team. If they run their assets on our platform and we see their actual performance is quite well, we could also help facilitate their fundraising process to our other institutional clients. And because other institutional clients are always bothered about the lack of a very transparent third-party proof of how well the strategy really is, we could provide that kind of proof to our investors and clients.
I see.
That's the whole point of all of our features.
Right, and that's obviously logical given that you are first and foremost that brokerage service. But I wanted to ask you, you mentioned that you want to provide those really technical services, want to make sure that you've got that quantitative data provision. But what happens though, Kira, in this scenario we see playing out now, where 99 or approximately that figure of digital assets don't have yet that empirical proof of any value at all in terms of correlation with their utility token and their plan. If you're going to onboard a multitude of different pairs for various assets, how can we trust that any of them have any meaning at all, given that you're providing for this brokerage service? But does it matter about the actual asset at all at your layer?
I imagine this case occasionally that in the future, all of those altcoins, currently we may have more than 2,000 kind of trading all cryptocurrencies, right? About 99% of them will disappear, but there will only be left with 2%. But
right.
I am a professional trader myself. So from my perspective, the cryptocurrency is one kind of asset class. I trade them not only because they have intrinsic value, also they are volatile, they have volatility. So as a professional trader, I trade volatility rather than the asset itself.
Right, and that's why I wanted to ask you, because volatility is the asset for the trader. They don't really sometimes care about what underpins that volatility. But the question I have is, what happens if the majority of these are just built on BS? If there's just nothing there at all, do people just continue capitalizing on the narrative?
Firstly, I believe there are values for cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin or other POW coins. Let's say, just for example, they will not be disappear because they are backed by an ecosystem and a bunch of miners.
And network effects and, okay.
Yeah. If there are several kinds of cryptocurrency live long, let's say, for example, and it has certain kind of volatility, what kind of services we could provide to our clients? It is all kinds of financial instruments that is tagged to the volatility of those cryptocurrencies. For example, futures, options, and other derivatives.
But does it concern you that we have things like Dogecoin, for example, in the top 100? It was deliberately meant to be an experimental coin. It wasn't meant to be something that had fundamental core worth or merit, but yet it's still very much in that camp of volatility, and so people trade it. Does it concern you? That's what I'm getting at, is the integrity of the startup. Does it even matter at the level you're at because volatility is so valuable?
You know what? It doesn't bother me any, because you see, I was engagement with this market since 2015. Back in 2015, there were already more than 2,000 altcoins in the market, and all of those altcoins disappear or vanish in last 4 years. You have to believe in the power of economic cycles. Currently, we are in the new entrance of another cycle, so there will be other kind of assets emerging.
Right. But how can we trust the longevity of the whole ecosystem if, as you mentioned, we saw 2,000 startups literally just fall off the wayside or fall off the crypto wagon? Doesn't there need to be some sort of mainstay group that show that there's more than just speculation inherent with those alternative startups, aside from just BTC itself that started this whole conversation? Because if we keep seeing a recycling effect, but with a replacement effect, with new to replace old, how do we build trust that some are going to stay the long haul, have value?
I think that is quite a philosophical question.
But is it? My question is more, do we actually need that empirically to trust that their system has merit? I'm being quite serious, not being so philosophical, because I'm asking you, do we need to see more evidence empirically that there's more to this system than just one coin?
Personally, I really do not have the answer to your questions because because currently we are undergoing an empirical environment, as you mentioned.
We are. It's very experimental, and it makes it so exciting. And I guess you're riding off the wave of the volatility and the experimental aspects of this.
I personally am very excited about to experiencing such kind of experiment. So I do not know which path this experiment is going to, but I'm quite enthusiastic to be part of it.
I see. And do you think that we're moving more towards legitimacy, given there's a harder line coming from the government and enterprise sectors?
Exactly. From my perspective, I already see Bitcoin as a supplement or a replacement to gold, because we always call it a digital gold. And the chairman of Federal Reserve also called Bitcoin an official digital kind of gold in his hearing. So we believe, let's say, in next 3 years at least, the Bitcoin will play a more important role in the global economy and as a major asset class. So we think the market will keep flourishing rather than vanish in next 3 to 5 years.
So do you think that in this instance that the top-down parties, such as the government enterprise, are forced to pay attention given the network effects, given the uptake, given the support from the grassroots of BTC? And the big question now is, what happens if they start to integrate their own blockchain-based startup, or some sort of system, whether that be a global G7 alliance-based coin, whether that be a stable coin currency, or even an ideal similar to what's emerged with BTC? What I'm asking is, are they going to come back and respond in kind, or are they simply just going to accept what's emerged as the people's version of an SOV asset that's now flourishing?
I mean, they absolutely will, because, I'm from China, right? Chinese government is actually considering about the issue certain kind of blockchain-based fiat called digital RMB. So a lot of nations, governments, or let's say traditional enterprises is actively pursuing a way in this market. The trend itself is inevitable, but I had to admit they are giants. So they have trouble about turning around. A big elephant cannot turn around very easily. So it take them some time to get into and be accustomed to this market, because this market
makes a lot of sense. Now, do you think that there's any possibility, if that did happen, and will happen eventually with their digital currencies, that they could actually utilize something like your protocol and later network?
Very funny question, because why do we name our Troy in the name of why do we name our project with the name of Troy?
Please tell me, because obviously there's some history there with Troy.
We always make a joke about the Libra. We think the Libra is the Troy house for Bitcoin, but our project will be the Troy of those traditional enterprises and financial investors to get involved in this market. We are like the Troy house for them. So that's the reason why we name our project in this way.
I see. So you really do have big ambitions, quite sincerely, just as Libra does and Calibra. We mentioned all of the regulation. What about security? How do you make sure that you have the best provisions of security and trust built in from the outset, so that people know they're not going to see risks inherent with hacks, for example, information being accessed and leaked, seeing risks with regard to manipulation?
Great. The risk, the security is the major issue we are concerning about every day. So we make a very full stack of solutions to that. Firstly, as I mentioned in former question before, we won't touch the asset of our clients. All of your assets will be custodial directly on those exchanges, and we choose our exchanges for custody very carefully. We only choose the top tier crypto exchanges like Binance or Huobi. So they will take all the responsibility and guarantee the safety of their assets, because we would sign a third-party custody agreements with them, including the clients, Troy Trade, and exchanges, to make sure all is legit and everybody's responsibility is quite clear. That can solve about 99% of the risk on our platform. And as for the data leakage, we have a whole set of exchange-level encrypted system. The user ID and the trading flow of certain clients are encrypted differently in different places. So only if a hacker can hack your username, but he doesn't know what trade you have performed. And if he hacked the trading orders, they do not know who make those orders. We do everything to protect the data and the security of our clients.
Okay, that's good to know. So you have that built-in security system, plus you're bypassing some of the inherent risk because you're entrusting a lot of the fundamental security of data with those other parties, whether they be centralized or centralized exchanges. So that's really interesting. I want to talk to you about some of the numbers when it comes to operational growth data. Things like your accumulated assets. There's 250,000 BTC mentioned there, accumulated trading volume of 5 billion, and then it just goes on and on and on. 2 billion daily orders, 100 million daily volume. I mean, I want to find out more about how you made those determinations, and are they already empirically happening?
Yeah, because you see, we are not a simple startup, because we have been doing this for almost a year. We develop our trading platform and offer our services to institutional investors, especially our investors. Those big blockchain investment firms has been trusting us for almost a year. They have primary investment business, they have trading and market making business, they have asset management business. They're nearly run all of their business on our platform for almost a year. So the number you see is the achievements we got in last year.
So they're real, and they're like, we can test them.
And I think the number we write on the deck you see is not the best performance of ours, because you see the average daily trading volume is about $100 million. I gave you the number, but our peak is about $300 million in April, because the market was quite well back then in April and May. But currently the market has cooled down, so our trading volume will fall down a little bit with it.
Okay, that's good to know. Now, how transparent are you with your protocol itself when it comes to developers, for example, assessing the quality of your technology? How willing are you to provide some of that code, for example, or is it all closed source?
Maybe a little difference because we are not a public chain. We are not an open source project. We are a SaaS provider, like let's say a software as service provider. So you may not be seeing our code directly, but you could see our product in October because we are launched.
Okay, so SaaS model by design makes a lot of sense. A middleware, essentially. You're protecting that code. You're centralized. So is the reason because essentially that secret source you wouldn't want leaked because you don't want people appropriating your technology?
I have to admit, the technology is not the major advantage of ours. So we protect this only because it's a centralized product, not open source. Our major advantage is the incentive resources and the connection we get with all the top players in this industry, because prime brokerage is in the center of the industrial chain, right? As a prime broker, we have to have the most intensive resources to get the best price, trading fees, trading speed, we from exchanges, and we have to have the resources to get access to institutional investors. So that is our major advantage and is our entry barrier to new.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. But why does it matter then? Why would it need to be something that you don't, disclose in terms of transparency? If in fact, you've got this first market mover position, you're well and truly ahead with when it comes to the prime broker position. Does it matter that people can or can't see your technology, even despite being centralized by design?
People, because our technology is not that kind of unique, let's say, because this kind of prime brokerage service system is quite mature in the traditional financial market, but we have to make some customized adjustments or make this product adapt to the climates of the cryptocurrency market. So that is the major differences. But after all, it is still a prime brokerage service system. It's not.
Okay. Now I want to talk quickly about your all-star leadership. That's what you guys state from your team at Troy. But how can we trust that you really do have what it takes as a team? I've read through your credentials, but I have to say it requires empirical research. You can't just rely on everything stated. But I want to hear it from you to reaffirm and give us some confidence. How did you go about picking this team? And how do we know that the skill sets are all there to continue to build this network that you plan to build by 2020?
Okay, as you can see, the three of my co-founders, including me, myself, Kira Sun, and Qihan, is the Chief Product Officer, and my CTO, Clark Tong. We met each other when we were both in this industry because we were business partners. We were in different companies, but we have daily interaction with each other every day because you see, Clark Tong is an exchange technology provider. He developed a lot of cryptocurrency exchanges, and they had a quite rich experience in the prime brokerage system and all the trading system. And Qihan is the product officer in OKEX, which is the leading contract trading crypto exchanges in the world, maybe the best in the world. And prior to OKEX, he had work experience in Tiger Brokers and East Money. Those are the
Hong Kong.
In Hong Kong. Those are the two most famous prime broker and the broker service provider in Hong Kong and in Asia. He was always in charge of product development. So he had rich experience in developing such kind of prime brokers business.
Okay, so you've got some serious experience in the domains you need.
Exactly. So we met each other when we were doing business, and we think we are quite comfortable with each other because everybody has their own expertise, and our team get well very together. We think it's the best timing, and we are the best team to make this happen.
Okay, and obviously with regard to readiness, you've already made it clear that you've been working on this for some time now, and that's important that we know that. I want to talk to you about a really tough question now. You're not going to like this, but there's been some suggestions in the recent years, particularly in the last year, that many of the startups that are emerging really function, and even by form, appear like securities because they're raising capital essentially from investors. Now, what would you say to someone who asked you that question, or perhaps I am now, with regard to just questioning the nature of utility tokens themselves? Are you confident that you've got this right in terms of the terminological determination, the determining what this actual title is of the token in its use case, because of the fact that there is this preceding expectation from the investors that there is value in your token?
Yes. From
Tough question.
Yeah, really, really tough, really tough. This is the first time I met such kind of questions. From my personal perspective, I have two answers for that. The first is that because as a prime broker, we have a standard business model. So our cash flow is genuine, and everybody know the logics about how we making cash compared to those public blockchain, because they are more like a concept. All their product do not generate real cash flow, but they are all floating in the air. But we are solid underground. We are a business. We have to make cash and make profits to support this development and this team, right? That is a strong back for our ecosystem. And the second is that because you see we are running such kind of service, so we have a plan for equity fundraising. We will bring a lot of traditional investors from US market, European market, those are fiat investors, right? To bring capital to our equity firm. And equity firm is a very transparent organization that is well proved, because everyone runs a company in the traditional world, right? We have auditors, we have accountants, we have all kinds of regulations to regulate how a company works. These two can help us to prove transparency to our investors.
Okay, now this is another tough question based on what you're saying. Now, if you are for profit, you're going to be making money, and obviously that would happen pretty rapidly, I would imagine. How do you ensure there's a strong correlation between the token as a utility token that also has those aspects we talked about as its inherent value? How do we see the correlation between that particular asset and the growth of your own ecosystem via, revenue and the success that it brings? Because I would imagine that would make sense, to start to see a correlation of growth in value. Mm-hmm. Tough question, I know.
Yeah, really, really tough. Because you could still think of the similarities of our token economics to the BNB token economics. We share the similar idea of periodic burning events. They use part of their revenue to burn and buy back tokens from the market, right? We are almost exactly the same, because you see our trading fee will be in the format of Troy token. We will make the rule very transparent, so the mechanism is transparent to everyone. Everyone could see, let's say, how much percentage we are burn and buy back from the market. I think that's our. And
is that information all yet decided in terms of calculating the amounts of burns? Because obviously your revenue is going to dictate the asset of the total, the value of the token as well. So how do you determine the amounts that are burned over time? Is that finite, or is that based on other variables?
To be honest, internally, we have reached an agreement about how much percentage is going to be allocated to burning events, but we will make it officially and transparent as long as we launch our product, because this has to be very transparent, right, to the client.
Right. Well, I would like to say on behalf of everyone, Kira-sun, thank you very much for your time today. I know it's been extremely long. It's extremely late here, well and truly past midnight for me. But I want to thank you for staying back in the office, because it is so important that we can ask all of these questions. Again, to reaffirm to all of the listeners, this was sponsored. I did my very best to ask all of the questions that I certainly wanted to know with regard to what the plan is, what they stand for at Troy. You've done that, you've answered those today, and hopefully that's just the first of many conversations to come, whether they be sponsored in the future, whether they be free. It's really not the point for me. I just want to make sure that we can better understand what you're doing as you build from now into the network you want to become. So thank you very much for letting us know the first phase, and that is Troy Trade. And once, as I said before, make sure if you'd like to know that 14-minute recap, if you'd like to experience that, it is in the link below, and we will catch up, Kira and I, to unpack that further in the future. Kira, is there anything you'd like to do to finish off as a final statement for all those that have survived this long interview, just to end, and raise anything that you wanted to finally add?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to you. Thank you, Brad, for your time and to give me this opportunity of sharing our insights and opinion to not only the product Troy itself, but also to the perspective of our future development, even if our vision in the industry. I really feel honored by having this opportunity. Thank you very much. And if everybody is interested in the project Troy, you can see our video and visit our official website to see the beta version of our product. We are really looking forward to your opinions and suggestions to help us go further. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. And once again, there's other social channels for you as well. Make sure you do explore them if you are interested in looking more into the Troy network and most importantly, the Troy trade system that starts it all. Once again, thank you again, Kira Sung, for your time as co-founder of Troy, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you very much.